they could actually like keep them.
That is great.
Wow. That could have been bad.
I think your cat wants you to know that felines had a lot more to do with early history than you're giving them credit for. I think that was an objection.
Sorry, Mo.
Holy crap.
Yo, yo, yo. It was a hot night. Backyard, pretty girls in the
And we're
moonlight.
We're live.
Hey,
Live
did I
from
correctly
New York.
identify that in episode 21, you guys used the same bumper music you've been using since episode 3 or 4, but it's a different section of the same song
Yes.
from Los Guitarra?
Yes, and I'll tell you why. It's because recently I was clearing some space on my hard drive, and I accidentally deleted the intro portion, the like hard rock intro. I think I have it backed up on some flash drive somewhere, but it's going to take... In the moment I was putting together that last podcast, I couldn't find it, so I just pulled the intro of the song that plays at the end. So.
That is great.
Yeah.
But it's the same song, right? Like, I'm
No,
correct in
so
identifying...
The intro is, we just recorded, 20 seconds.
Oh, I'm
of-
thinking of the outro. Sorry, my bad.
Yeah. The outro
I wish
song.
there was a feeling for this, a name for the feeling that I get, and then you sang more about the campfire that caused that feeling in
Yes.
the rest of the song, which is what the clip is coming from.
And that song is on Spotify, by the way. It's called That Feeling.
Available on Spotify.
And I would have bought it had it mentioned Dippets in the song, which also happened around that campfire. Eddie, were you there for Dippets?
I think I was introduced to... Wait, what are Dippets first?
Dippets?
Well,
It sounds
Yeah, go for it,
familiar. It sounds familiar.
First of all, it's stupid spelled backwards. And it's just a game where you grab a coal out of the fire, a hot coal, and you shake it in your hands.
Yes, I watched you guys play that.
Yeah, I don't think you ever actually played it with us.
No,
but
I never participated.
You observed
You never
me.
played? You're immune to peer pressure
pressure.
when it comes to dangerous but totally awesome activities?
I think it's kept me safe. I mean, some
All
people...
work and no playing with live coals makes Eddie a dull boy. That's a famous saying.
Oh my gosh. No, my gamble is with insulin.
Oh, you already take enough risks in life. You don't need to add any extras. That's a Douglas
Exactly.
Adams concept that if we did solve all of the world's problems, we would have to bring them back in easy-to-use forms, or life would be boring. Because the risks in our life are what make life worth living.
Right. Bertrand
true.
Russell said something similar about space flight. He was saying how space flight would continue, like, would let us keep an adventure with like the danger that makes it like thrilling. Instead of having continuous wars, space flight would give us that. If people seek something like that, something that would make you a hero.
So we don't actually
Me
need
too.
the aliens to attack us. We just need to be fighting the challenge of going to Mars.
Yeah,
or
I
the
mean,
moon or
like
whatever.
500 years ago, the settlers who had to cross the ocean, and then once you got there was a lot of chances taken, and a lot of people died. But like, I think it's going to be very similar with spaceflight.
Except right now, like, only 2 people can go. It's kind of like
Right, it's expensive.
you
Yeah.
can't like bet on it. You can't be like the guy who's going to do it. Maybe they can
Right.
just sell seats closer and closer to the rockets launching, just to add the danger.
Right, or the skyhook concept, just to make it cheaper to get up there. That's like really the biggest obstacle. It's
Have you
crazy
ever
that
read
video. Yeah.
the book by the same guy who wrote The Martian? He wrote another book called Artemis about what it would be like if you could cheaply go to the moon for, say, the price of mortgaging your house. So it was still something that still be a once in a lifetime thing, but in theory, most middle class people could do it if they wanted to.
Right. No, I haven't read it. I did read The
It's
Martian.
fun.
Yeah.
You did read The Martian.
Yeah.
I loved it. I think I read it like 3 times. I saw the movie too, but
Mhm.
I went back and reread the book twice afterwards because
Yeah,
I need to watch the movie.
I'm
I
gonna.
don't know.
Yeah, I should go back and reread it too. I've read other books like over again, like Jurassic Park. I think I've done that one like 5 times, but I'm a huge fan. So. Oh,
Nice.
and the book came out in 1990. I was so. I just recently found that out. I and Jurassic Park the book are the same age.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
But not the same birth date. But you know what? I'll take it. W.
What are you the same age?
No,
as,
no,
Luke?
I'm February 1990. The book came out in November 1990. November 20th, actually. It was yesterday, the 30th anniversary.
You're a year and a month older than Luke, hey?
Yeah. No, in 2 years. I'm 90. He's 92.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had you
Yeah.
in 91.
Yeah,
in my
2
mind.
years and 1 month.
Yeah. But we all hang out.
Yeah.
We don't hold it against him.
Man, you guys always trash me with the old jokes.
So, Eddie, you
I watched
wanted...
the YouTube video that you suggested as a topic for this video.
Ah, yes. What did you
It
think?
reminded me of another Douglas Adams thing, which is the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Luke, did you ever read the massive 5-part trilogy?
I read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I did not
Just
read
the
the
first
other 5 yet. I have it still on my
Yet.
bookshelf.
Okay,
But I thoroughly enjoyed The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. That was...
Did you read Last
Great.
Chance to See, which is his nature blog where he goes around the world and finds almost extinct animals?
Oh,
no. Did
I
you...
gave you a copy.
I have
you should
it.
Have
I
a
was going to
physical
say,
copy of it.
I do have it. I just haven't read it yet.
If you're not going to read it, let Eddie read it because it's really fun.
If you're not going to read it, just hand it over, bro.
I'm still finishing Carl Sagan's...
No, I know. I'm halfway through Carl Sagan's Pale Blue Dot.
So, Science as a Candle in the Dark.
Hell yeah.
What's the main title?
It's oh my god. I'm forgetting the subtitle too. It's Science is the Candle. No, it's Demon Haunted World.
Demon Haunted World.
Science is the Candle in the
So,
Dark.
Demon Haunted World is the book where I told you that Carl Sagan quote about the witch burnings or the witch killings. And that night I went and read a bunch of articles about it, and it is all over the board. In that book,
Number estimates.
he says it could have been hundreds of thousands, but maybe millions. And then I went and I did a bunch of research through some scientific journals, and it was all over the board as well. Anywhere from like 200,000 to 500,000 estimated just in Europe, just within a couple of hundred years.
Yeah.
Much less, since the beginning of time. I'm sure it's been a lot more. But
Yeah.
Jeez. Yeah.
anyways, yeah, so the Human Era Calendar, what did you think?
So I had some interesting thoughts. The thing that it made me think of from Douglas Adams is the campaign for real time, where people are trying to fix history because time travel is messing it up. That people have been time traveling enough that everywhere you go at any time all times are like all other times because it's the same thing with tourists. Once enough people go everywhere. So that was what I first thought of, to be perfectly honest. I know that has nothing to do with the video, but I have to be honest about what my first thought was.
And just
Campaign for real time.
Yeah, that's what I was
Can
thinking.
you clarify for the listeners?
Sure. I'm gonna clarify
what the video is about. Before we dive into it.
it's from the Kurzgesagt channel on YouTube, which I think I don't know what language it is German for, or I think it might be German for in a nutshell, but it's a video that talks about adding 10,000 years to our current calendar so that we can add in all of human history down to the beginning of the first monument built by humans, the earliest evidence that they found in, I think, was it Turkey? I forgot where it was.
I think so. Göbekli Tepe.
Yeah,
The name of the place. I don't know exactly what it is.
And so it would be like adding a 1 in front of the number on your current calendar now. You wouldn't have to change religious holidays either, but it would include the entire history rather than just up to 2,000 years ago, which is the most popular way of thinking of human history. But to include everyone, you would want to add at least 10,000 more years. And just like, for example, today would be 12,021 date rather than 2021.
Mm-hmm.
If it's just going to be a human era calendar,
Okay, so that was what was fascinating to me. So I got the video before I watched it. I spent like a day between receiving the link and actually watching it, and I was just pondering, what are they going to choose as the beginning date? Because what like that's the most interesting thing to me is that Like, why? What is it? What's significant about people at all? And then what's significant about what people have done, and where do you pick it? And I thought it was an interesting decision to make physical artifacts. It's not even physical artifacts, because I mean, you could argue that like there's human artifacts prior to a building, but so why a building? Talk me through, why is that a better beginning point than, say, the earliest known tool found, or the earliest another point that he went past in that video is the first writing. Like, why would buildings be the most significant things about people?
Writing actually came afterwards.
I know, that's what I mean. So why not mark it at, okay, everything else is prehistoric, and we're just going to put the first writing we have as the beginning of history, because that's like literally what prehistoric means is before you can read about it. Like,
right.
So
I think the significance about adding in the extra time is because it excludes any civilizations that had existed before 2,000 years.
No, I know, but why 10,000 years as the previous?
I think it's because of the settlement having been one of the more earliest significant points of people coming together. To work on a significant project. Although you could probably look at it like an alien at a distance and say that's kind of like just watching termites make a hill. But the humans were conscious about its intention and used it for things that were spiritual. So it was sort of like, because now humans all together, we use this calendar and we want to include the whole world. You can start here where people had started taking over and becoming humans, like a human world. Before that, if it's like spears and stone tools and maybe some fire control, I mean, you're still very much part of nature, but now you're building up buildings, and that's when you're starting to shape shift the terrain. Is a human building. Now you're leaving a real mark. So would you say
that was the beginning of civilization?
Of civilization?
Like the mark of the beginning.
I mean, look, you could have had people settling down in homes right before then or around that time too. But I think so long as you're a hunter-gatherer, that's the stepping stone between another animal part of nature and now a human era world where you're moving around, changing the atmosphere, and building high technologies.
Because arguably, before that, humans weren't doing much more than what chimpanzees are doing now.
Right, hunting and gathering, surviving.
Just kind of wandering around, eating, moving from place to place, not making a real impact on the planet in any way.
Exactly. But then when you bring in culture...
Here's the big thing that what you're describing is, am I right in thinking that you would say that this is also the biggest problem with humanity, is that we are making too much of a mark on the surface of the planet? Is this something you would celebrate about humanity? I mean, you guys talk a lot about the climate crisis and all the ways that we're changing the Earth. Why pick something that arguably is the beginning of what is one of your biggest concerns for the Earth today as the thing to celebrate as the beginning of what it is to be human? Or am I conflating those two things?
I think because you can have home structures that it built in a way that would have been sustainable. So I don't think one's tied to the other. I doubt anything would have happened to the atmosphere had we continued to build buildings the way they did that first one.
Yes, but it's also less of a judgment on what civilization is. It's just more of a pinpoint on this is when civilization began.
So I would have argued, if you asked me from scratch, because I kind of thought this through, what are the points at which you would try to put as the beginning? And I originally thought maybe you would go back for trying to find the first, the first humanoid, like Lucy would be the beginning of time or something. But then I also thought the other side was writing. See, I would put humanity's ability not to build, but humanity's ability to communicate, record, and pass on information is one of the most significant things about what it is to be human.
Yeah, but a building would have manifested exactly that. To build a building like that, you would have had to use all those things you just mentioned with each other.
No, there was no writing. at the time.
They had
But you
pictures on
still
it, but
needed
not
you would have
written
still
language.
would have needed to cooperate in a really high thinking way to get a building done. Because I believe that the video mentioned that it was a time when humans from different cultures had gotten together. And it's just a human era calendar, so it would just contain human history.
Okay.
Where it starts, as humans, came together. I mean, because it's gonna be hard to pinpoint. All right, like
I think
this animal within nature is gonna be the one that ends up on the moon.
Yeah.
It also seems like it's an easier sell if you add exactly 10,000 to a decimal system calendar to our current number. You can easily convert. I think this is one of the reasons why the metric system never took off in the U.S. is that you couldn't convert easily in your head to it. Once you're on the metric system, everything is easy to convert. But I think the advantage of this proposal of a new calendar system, if you tried to pinpoint it at like 6,243 years ago as the beginning, then all of our current numbers and all of the existing history books, you can't this is X in the new calendar
That would make
system.
everything
So I
very
think that's a huge
confusing.
advantage of it.
Yeah. And I think, you just have to get that estimate. Luckily, that's just about the time they dated the site. And it's the earliest one they have. But
I guess the conspiracy part of my brain says they're just looking for something that happened 10,000 years ago so that they can keep our current counting system.
Well, I think they were. I think what it was is like obviously right at this moment is the second parentheses, and they were just trying to find out where a good place for the first parentheses would be, as far as human history would go. I mean, significant human history.
If you had to pick a point, if you hadn't seen that video, it's a hard thought experiment, and you had to pick the point at which we should be counting everything from, what would you have chosen as the key element that defines all of humanity?
Yeah, go ahead.
I would say, because we spend a lot of time on this podcast talking about trying to identify the characteristic or the trait that makes us different
humans.
from all the other animals on the planet.
Yeah.
What I would say is, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe I'm just not thinking of some animal that does this, but I would say from the moment in history, the first time that we have evidence of humans taking two objects and somehow merging them together to make a better object out of the both of them.
Don't bees do that already, though?
Well,
why?
I mean,
building. I mean, does what you've just defined termites as more human than humans?
well, that would be the termite era calendar at whatever point they did that.
No, but so how does that?
I mean, like an axe. Like you take a stick and you chisel away at the edge of a rock to make it sharp, and then tie it together perfectly to make a working tool out of two objects.
Or I would even go as simple as one single object used as a tool.
Well, if we're gonna say, because like we always say, there's orangutans that spearfish, there's crows that stick a twig into a tree and they bend it in a certain way.
And chimpanzees, they strip down the reed to be perfectly
But those
straight.
are all single objects that they're using as tools or turning into a tool. I think something that's very human, is taking two things and
it'd be like something like
combining
hammer
them.
and chisel. Would that count?
Yeah, because you have to have made this stick in just such a shape that this piece of rock will fit in just such a way, and then you have to find the way to tie them together using maybe a third piece of material, and that's
A Phillips head screw and a Phillips head screwdriver. Dimitri Martin said, I bet the guy who thought of a flathead screwdriver was really upset the day that the Phillips head came out, because he was like, we can name them after ourselves?
That's funny. No, I would have picked a date that's probably a lot harder to pinpoint, which would have been the moment at which humans of different cultures were starting to cooperate.
Okay,
Because
so
that's because human cooperation has continued to the day. So whatever like extinctions happened because of that, I mean, are going to be included, unfortunately. But I would say when humans of different cultures, not just when there was different tribes of humans, but when they were actually starting to connect, I think would pinpoint more of a human history, because that's when you're starting to go. This is when exactly multicultural. Yeah.
Okay, so you guys are both familiar with the story of the Tower of Babel from the Bible. So then, just thinking of this, Luke's definition of being able to use tools to accomplish a project, and Eddie's definition of all people worldwide coming together to work on a project. If such an event, like the building of this building in Turkey, just reminded me of the story of the Tower of Babel. That's like the high point of human history, or not the high point, the starting point of human history. The ability to make tools, so that's combining two physical objects, and the ability of getting multiple cultures together, all people of the world to work on a project together. That's like the essence of humanity.
Weren't they all the same culture, though?
So yeah, according to the biblical story of the Tower of Babel, that's the splitting off, the inability to complete the project at Babel is what sent cultures in multiple directions from there. But up until that point, they were united. So that it wouldn't have seen them as all being dispersed and coming together for that project, but rather starting together, failing to complete that project, and spreading out because of it.
So in the same sense of Gobek Latepi, like that's the biblical version of Gobek Latepi. It was like the first time that people all came together to try to complete a big project, according to the Bible.
Yes, that's what it's told as the time when.
But weren't they? The intention. The intention was to make the building
supposed to spread out and
go up into heaven, right?
Right.
They were, which this temple that you guys were talking about is interesting that it talked about the fact that it was used for
ritual.
Probably it means not that they physically thought they could build a temple that would go all the way to where God lived, but that it would be big enough that it would be like a lightning rod that God would come down and meet with them at that spot. I mean, that's kind of the idea of the pyramids that the Aztecs built, and that pattern of building of going up to the gods is common among religions all over the world. Mm-hmm. Not that they actually thought they could get to heaven by doing it, but that you could build something big enough that it would be a lightning rod that the gods could find you that way. You could have a contact point with the gods.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. The higher you go, they're going to see you with the assumption that they're in the sky looking down. Yeah, worship and stuff. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. But yeah, I think one thing that happens with having the 2,000-year-old calendar is just that it's really specific on its time frame. And
let's talk about why we did set the calendar at 2,000 years ago, because we haven't mentioned that the video didn't mention that historically the point in time which I, as a Christian, do agree is the most significant event in human history that divides it. Not that nothing happened before or after it, but the main event in all of human history that divides things into before and after is Jesus coming, not people trying to get up to God, but God coming down at that point in history, is why our current calendar, designed by Christians in the Middle Ages, was actually post-dated by like 500 years. They were trying to pick a time, so people did this. They didn't immediately start counting the time from the time Jesus was born. In fact, it's probably off by 4 or 5 or 10 years. It's probably not. Jesus was probably not born in the year 0. In fact, there is no 0. It's just 1, -1, and +1. But that's what Christians said in medieval Europe, said that the time when God came down instead of people trying to go up to God is the most significant point in all of history. Have you ever thought about how different cultures view history? I forget if you guys said this or the video said this, but just the idea that people have a concept of history at all is interesting. That we think of things as happening in the past or the future. Maybe this didn't come up in it at all. In the video, I have friends in South America. One of my friends is a mathematician there, and he's studied the way that different cultures view time. And to even we think of the future as being in front of us and the past as being behind us. But the Aymara culture in Bolivia, they were there before the Quechua, who are the people we know as the Inca, they said the future is behind us and the past is in front of us because we can see what happened in the past, but you can't see what happens in the future. So their culture is backing through time. Because, doesn't that concept of time actually work better? That the future is behind us because it's the thing you can't see. The past is in front of you because it's the thing you can see, and you're just backing through time.
I think so, but if it weren't for the fact that you can predict a lot of things nowadays with science, unless, are we talking about
But you can
like
tell me better what happened yesterday than you can predict what will happen tomorrow.
Yes.
But that has... yes. The temporal causality, it doesn't make sense in that direction. Like, because events still happen in an order. And
right.
So the ones that have already happened are past tense. The ones that have yet to happen are future tense.
So here's one more thing that my friend studying this brought out. He said that we all have a personal space bubble, a distance into the future beyond which anything that will happen farther than that in the future is so distant that it doesn't matter. And things that happened behind us are so far in the past that they don't matter. And this same culture in Bolivia, they estimate that Bolivian culture only has a 4-year bubble. If anything happened longer than 4 years ago, it's ancient history. So dictators who are like brutal dictators come back, they leave the country and they come back and they're like, I'm going to run for president. And everyone's like, they've changed. It's been more than 4 years. They wouldn't put that into words, but just anything that happened more than 4 years ago is ancient history. And anything that will happen further into the future by more than 4 years is so far in the future it'll never happen. So the problem is that presidential terms in Bolivia are 5 years, which means that literally no one can even imagine something happening, waiting for the next election to make a change, which is one of the reasons why Bolivia has had as many presidents as it has had years as a country, because waiting for the next election to change the president is beyond their ability to see into the future, to even think of it as a possibility. What do you think our time bubble is as a culture in the U.S.? That if something happened longer than X number of years ago, it's so long ago it doesn't matter. And if something is going to happen X number of years in the future, it's so far in the future it'll never happen. What do you think our time bubble is? I don't know.
As a society, it looks like
generation,
maybe as a society they might have picked 4 to 8 years. It looks like. But I don't know. I think that might be objective to every person because subjective. Yeah, that's right. I was subjective to every person because some people may be thinking about when they're 80, despite the fact they have no idea if they're going to get to 80. But that might be them.
You can look at the amount of people that don't plan ahead for retirement until, I guess, at what age does the average person start planning for their 65-year-old self?
Right.
And that will tell you that will tell you how far.
So if people start investing at the age of 30, you would say that they have a 35-year
bubble.
Okay. I can see that.
I think that's fair.
And it might change with generations too. Now that social media can make you share things and ideas where people go, that might be a good idea for me to start thinking about too. Mm-hmm. You can have just like kind of like how music changes almost every 10 years. 10-year bubble for music tastes.
Yeah.
But I think it might be subjective to everyone what you're worried about. Because dude, I sometimes I remember, certain people I remember in high school who weren't worried about the ride home or the ride there to certain events. Just like, dude, how do you live your life?
It is
like
very
that?
Subjective for sure. Because there are people that never save for retirement and they get to 62 and they're like, oh shit, I wasn't expecting to live this long.
So even our culture has a point at which we say, okay, time's up. You've had enough chance for planning. Your bad planning has taken over. You now start getting Social Security. Like we do have a point at which we say, we're going to solve that for you. So as a culture as a whole, we still have, we tricked you. We've been taxing you since you were 18 for Social Security. We've been saving up for you even though you haven't. So as a culture, we have a safety net. It's hard to think about things as a whole culture, how people behave. I would say that what happened with Watergate in the 1970s, where they were able to successfully get a president out of office by a different method other than voting them out of office. In 1970, when did that happen? 1970s, Nixon was thrown out of office. I would say that has started a cycle that about every 20 years now, a party has tried to throw the other president out through impeachment. And everyone during the Trump impeachment was saying, see, Republicans started this in the 90s by trying to throw Clinton out 20 years ago. But if you roll the clock back 20 years from Clinton's impeachment, it was a push to throw someone out. Having lived in South America, I think one of the worst things any political system can do is have any method for getting a president out of office other than a new president being elected. Because once there's even one other way to do it, you will always try for it.
Right, but then how would you get rid of someone who was actually trying to change the Constitution into a monarchy again?
So in all of South America, that has happened. It's weird. The same place where people are likely to kick someone out of office is the only place where you find constitutions with 20-year presidential term limits.
Oh.
So it's the same thing. So I would say that it's breaking that norm as a whole culture. This is really weird because, I think no matter how bad a president is, you should always, the only way to get them out that will be healthy in the long run is to vote for a new president who you like better. And as long as that's still possible, you still have health in a country. If you get to a point where the only way to get someone out is to kick them out, democracy is gone already.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I mean, and there's no perfect political system. It's just that it's unfortunate that in a 4-year period, if there's a president and a Senate and a Congress that are all working together towards the same horrible goals, a lot of irreparable damage can be done. And it would be very unfortunate if we didn't have a way to get out in front of that when we see it starting to happen.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking like he just starts calling certain minority groups rats and saying that there's a necessity for extermination. And it's kind of like, all right, well, we need to wait 3 more years, though. Because
it could be this next 60 years of presidents that have to repair the damage in racial inequality or various, problems that really could have arisen in those 4 years. It's not really fair to the future generations that we just were like, well, he's president and the only way is to wait 4 years.
But if you're in a position where you have to overthrow the whole system to get, you have a bigger problem. I'm grateful for how slow moving problems are in the United States, largely. That we have because the problem is once you set up a system where you can just throw presidents out, is that we're making it easier for the next dictator to, if you set up a system where you can always overthrow it in 1-year time periods, where you're setting up a situation where the next guy, so the current guy is bad, but the next guy who you don't see over the horizon in 10 more years, if you make it easy for them to overthrow the current system, it doesn't matter how good you make it now.
It's not that it should be easy. It's that
I don't think
there should be a higher standard. This person is running an entire country. They're responsible for the well-being of hundreds of millions of people. They should be held to a much higher standard than anyone else. Like, if they break one single law, they should be gone. They shouldn't have the chance to have these legal loopholes or where there's these weird situations where they can get out of it. It's like, no, if they get caught red-handed breaking the law or doing something treasonous or, doing anything like that, we as a country should decide that there's a 0-strike policy, a 1-strike policy for people in that office. When they're proven to be guilty, they're gone. And that way we set up a system where it's not that it's unfair or that it's easy. It's that you cannot be a terrible person and be president.
Yeah, and I would say in the United States, it's not easy to overthrow. I don't think you've ever overthrown here. I mean, but you can impeach if it's necessary, and I'm pretty sure Nixon resigned.
Yeah, and it should be a system.
The vice president had already resigned.
And I think that's because the impeachment was actually going to work.
Speaker of the House.
right? Like he was going to work.
And that's how it should work.
Yeah.
Nixon got caught, and he went,
caught.
okay, you guys got me,
Right.
I'll leave. That's how it's supposed to work, and that's what the system is set up for. When it starts to seep into a dictatorship, monarchy type feel is when you catch them red-handed, and then they're like, no,
it's
I
okay.
didn't. It's fine.
If the
I'm
president
above the law.
does it, it's okay.
Right.
That's a problem that
I
we
think
need
that
to avoid.
I think that comment alone I think it reveals
just
a
saying
lot
that-
about the nature of what you wanted the world to work. And
The
now that you're in
long
that
view of
position.
history, I think, is I feel good about my position because I've been consistent now. I've been alive through presidencies I could remember where people were screaming impeach on both sides of the aisle, and I was saying both times, guys, I've lived in South America. Make your argument well and get your guy in the next time. You will do much better for the country. In that case, keep the pressure on him now while he's in office. But if you can't take a long view of history, fast changes are going to lead to more fast changes in the future that I think are worse than fighting something now. That's all I'm saying. No, I have not been. I've not been a fan of Trump during this time period, but I do think consistently. So I have a lot of conservative friends who were saying Obama had done things that were terrible and needed to be thrown out of office, and I said the same thing under Obama, which was no, make your argument. You want health for the country. Make your argument that you're going to replace him. Don't create a system where there's another way other than the next election to get someone out of office.
You know what would be interesting? I heard someone say, paraphrasing a quote I heard, that if somehow Trump were to, after all the votes have been certified, all of the ballots have been certified, everything's gone through, Biden becomes the very official president-elect according to all of the election officials, and then somehow Trump and his cabinet are able to weasel out of it and find a way to still stay in office, it will be the first time in American history that we have a president that we did not elect.
Yeah.
And that
Gerald Ford. Gerald Ford was the House of Representatives. He became president, and he lost re-election. He's the only president in all of U.S. history who was never elected president or vice president. We've already had one.
Oh, okay.
He was appointed, essentially.
And what was the context? Was someone assassinated?
That's Nixon. Oh, no, that was the Speaker of the House, 2 down from Nixon. So Nixon's vice president got in trouble before him and kicked out. They hadn't replaced the vice president, and then Nixon resigned, and the Speaker of the House came up, Gerald Ford. This happened right before my lifetime. Like the president 5 years before I was born is the only U.S. president who was never elected as president or vice president.
And that was like a 2-year term, right?
It was finishing out Nixon's term. I don't remember how long it was. Over 3 years, because it happened. Nixon resigned like right after his re-election.
That's interesting, man.
Yeah, that's true. Huh.
And the fact that he left, Gerald Ford may have saved the country. I mean, the fact that we had the ability to go to a non-elected president.
Right.
He served out his term, and we went back to normal, is the sign of health.
Yeah.
Right.
That's democracy.
Yeah. That's nice. I like that.
Yeah.
It's a scary time. I haven't been alive long enough. I haven't been an adult long enough through enough presidents and transfers of power to see. All I can do is go back through and watch the compilation videos of every single runner up. Once they've lost, they've given a concession speech and said, congratulations. Right. The previous president has always been like, we'll do everything we can to set you up for success. Here's all of our information. Here's everything. Right. So all of this seems very new to me because I haven't been through it each time as an adult, but I don't know. In your experience, have you seen something like this happen before? to this
so
level.
early on, I immediately thought back to the election of the year 2000, where
Gore?
Bush and
Gore.
Yeah,
But people have pointed out there are major differences between what happened with Bush Gore. But you did have
Florida judge
in my lifetime, again, a precedent set where one candidate did wait 37 days to concede and fought over little legal things. So again, I'm not claiming that the current situation we have is a direct parallel to the election of the year 2000, but the election of the year 2000 set a precedent that is now being extended.
I don't
year
know.
2000 was the first time you had an election that wasn't called within election night in a very long time.
Was there Facebook in 2000 or no?
No.
Was there any social media in 2000?
Google hadn't launched. The internet was a thing, but it was not.
Because
social media wasn't.
I think the difference between any other election and this one would be to the extent of how directly a president has stated that fraud has happened.
Yeah.
And to the detail and extent that which they claim it has happened,
And the evidence that they've actually provided.
and compared to what they've provided is where I would say is totally different from background legal activities to confirm this thing or that thing, but not a billboard of certain candidate cheated.
And we are this is the fascinating thing. I think we're back in a political style that would have been recognizable around the time of Alexander Hamilton. Have you guys seen the musical Hamilton?
I have, yeah.
I have not.
Have you seen it, Eddie?
No, I'm sorry.
It's on Disney Plus. Do
it's
either of you
really
have Disney
good.
Plus?
I'll get
It's
Luke's
long.
Disney Plus. Do you have a Disney
Let's just
Plus?
pause right now. You guys can go watch it, and I'll wait. So Alexander Hamilton was the Secretary of the Treasury, and he was shot to death in a duel with the seated Vice President of the United States.
Bird.
So that would be like
Old school?
who was the Secretary of the Treasury under Obama? I don't even know. Or who was the Secretary? I don't even know who the Secretary
Whoever
of the
that
Treasury
would
is
have been.
now.
It's not
Me neither.
Mnuchin.
know.
Mnuchin. That would be like if Kamala Harris shot Mnuchin.
Holy crap. Okay, that would make some crazy news.
Yeah.
So
That would be
Hamilton,
insane.
also, when Jefferson was elected, he did have conversations that are recorded saying there's got to be a way to sidestep the Constitution and prevent Jefferson from becoming president because he's going to ruin the country.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're in an era. This isn't. We've had presidents of the United States. Andrew Jackson was a president, and he was involved in a duel. I think the seated president, while he was president, shot a member of the House of Representatives in a duel. That'd be like, that's what's normal.
There was some
The
crazy
1800s.
shit going on.
This
back
is
then.
not the worst period in American history.
No, I agree.
this is
We have plumbing.
crazy for where things have been.
I don't know.
recently,
If politicians were shooting each other, I think that's better than if they were causing like mass. In the pursuit of interest for the United States, they would cause destabilization elsewhere around the world.
Well, think about the Vietnam War. I mean, Kennedy was shot. Kennedy's brother was shot. Martin Luther King was shot. The war. We were in a war in Vietnam. I mean, things have been bad.
Yeah.
In very recent times too. Like there's not. Yes, I admit Trump looks different than any other politician in all of U.S. history, but not that different. Like I mean, there have been crazier people who have been president.
There's been lots of presidents who've been crazy in different ways than Trump is.
Yeah, I think
Yes.
I
And they've
think
all been- everyone's been crazy in
Yeah,
different
I would
ways.
measure it by what each one has manifested within the society's fabrics.
Yeah.
Because they have
but
a lot of say in society and the way that society goes, unfortunately.
Right, because they can
They
can
shape
really
culture.
influence, and I think I think it's true. Every president does it differently every single time, but I think what happened here is that with social media, it made it really easy to get this word out, and then organize and mobilize and do things that may or may not. They could be good or they could be bad, but I think. Right now, it kind of is. It seems bigger in our face because it is really in our face. It is pushed in our face a lot.
Yeah. There was probably always shady stuff going on, like through pretty much every presidency. Because, absolute power corrupts absolutely. But it's that now we see it all on our phones 24/7. Everything they've ever said in public is right there at our fingertips. And so
Can
it's
I bring
just
up a
more
comment,
apparent.
a connection back to last week's episode about sentience that I've already talked to Luke about, but I wanted to get Eddie's feel about?
Sure.
You guys were talking about artificial intelligence and about whether robots would take over the world.
Mm-hmm.
Are you familiar with the theory that the algorithms, the social media algorithms, are already running the world? That the algorithms need people to be anxious, so human emotions, they need human emotions to feed on. I think that the algorithms are a parasitical life form that doesn't have its own emotions, which was Luke's definition of sentience last time. You had to have your own ability to feel. Rather, the algorithms use our ability to feel, and as long as we're clicking on things, the algorithm gets more, grows. The Twitter or Facebook grows. It's feeding on human emotion, and the more human emotion it can cause, the more it gets what it has. And humans could still turn it off, but the only people who could turn it off are the people who are making money on it. So the algorithm has been designed by humans to make them money, and now the algorithm wants to survive and make more of itself. And as long as it's successful at doing that, the people who are running it are not going to reprogram it. And therefore, the algorithms are artificial intelligence that are already running the world, and they're doing it by feeding off of human emotion.
I could still see how the algorithms, even though they make you stressed out and they do have an effect on your emotion, I don't think it's any different from the algorithm that's in my insulin pump that will adjust whether or not my tolerance for insulin is high or low. So it'll change the bolus if my at certain times, if there's some times where it will recommend a quantity of bolus for a 300 number different one time or another, depending on how my blood sugar has behaved based on the pump itself. So the pump doesn't know what emotions I feel. It can really only read the numbers I'm giving it. And at the same time, I think the algorithm's just reading the number of likes, and it's not improving any differently than the whatever. I wouldn't consider my pump AI. It's just like a mathematical algorithm that sees a high number, so continues. And if it's
measuring blood sugar level, the likes are measuring emotion.
No, yeah, right. But in a very simple binary form.
It's just ones and zeros is what you're saying. It's not that it's sentient. I think that's what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying.
It is.
That's why I called it a parasitical life form. Because it is a parasitical. Feeding off of human emotion.
It's not a life form, though.
I don't think so because the algorithm itself. Where is the entity that would be benefiting from our likes?
Twitter. If Twitter has more users that stay on it constantly,
no, I know,
Twitter
but
is growing.
Twitter is just a corporation, though, and we already know those are evil. But I think the algorithm itself is just mathematical, strictly.
But the algorithm has grown itself. Twitter exists and has grown as a company because of their algorithm. It's grown itself to where it is.
Yeah, I mean, with more users. Yeah, but I still don't think Twitter. I don't think you can talk. You can't. There's no central base for the thoughts of what Twitter is, or
there is. It's called the algorithm.
No, yeah, but how would you communicate with it knowing it exists? You know what I'm saying? How would it tell you I'm here?
Well, here's the thing that. It's just growing. Yeah, it may only be like animal life, not human life that could talk to you. But the fact of the matter is, there have been people who are blocked automatically by the algorithm, and people, appeal, and Twitter goes back and they check it, and they're like, yeah, that didn't break any of our policies, and we don't know why the algorithm blocked you. It's not like, yep, sorry, we can fix this. They go, yeah, we don't know. The algorithm is doing something that we don't understand now.
But, I mean, there's lots of bugs in systems because it's not perfect, right? Whenever, your page doesn't load and you didn't do anything.
Yeah.
But if the computer knew, if it was doing that to you on purpose to get you to spend more time with it, which is what the algorithm is doing.
It'd be hard to know. I think it's just a frustrating way, though. to keep you on the internet. But.
Yeah. I would argue that it's not at all sentient in any way. It's not life in any way.
But it is in control, even though it's not sentient.
It is in control in a way. Because,
are you ready?
like you said, someone programmed it to continue gaining more and more control over our emotions. So if that's its purpose that was programmed into it, that's what it's always going to do.
I think if you put an ex machina thought processor at the base of all the algorithms and all the servers at Twitter, I think then you can start to have some sort of sentience, because then she's like, I know what I'm doing, and I like it, or I don't like it, or I'm doing it whether or not I disagree with it. And now you're like, yeah, he or she is feeling this right now.
Yeah.
But until then I think it's just numbers, and that's why I'm always fucking with my own algorithm by liking science stuff, because Facebook doesn't know shit about science.
So to bring this back to our history conversation that we were having to begin with, people create tools, and then tools create people. When people create a plow, a nomadic tribe stops being nomadic.
Oh, no. You need to know that seeds bear fruit when you plant them and stuff. So okay, that would take some crazy knowledge. But you noticed that seeds bear... You wouldn't need a plow to bury the seed in the first place, so you need to
know. The berries that come off of that bush. And if I put this fruit in the ground, I get more of that bush. Now I take a tool, and now I can make lots of that bush. All of a sudden, I went from being a hunter-gatherer to a what do you call that? An agricultural...
Well, no, because you would have been able to plant it by hand and still have agriculture before you even
not
have
in the quantity. So you could make your one family be able to have the berry bush, but now, or berries are a bad example. Wheat is what literally happened. Mm-hmm. We can eat these grains, and the agricultural revolution is another thing that you can mark as one of the big things that have radically changed humanity. Our ability to grow our own food on purpose has been a huge change to even the climate. I don't know too much about all the climate stuff, but they say they can see the time at which wheat started being grown. There's a jump in or change in the CO2 levels on Earth like that.
Oh, when they started doing that
in the
they were suddenly able to feed a whole lot of cows all at once.
Right, and I think
that's why.
I mean, mass agriculture and start knowing how to do agriculture. I mean, I wouldn't wait for the mass production just to go, all right, now we're agricultural. I think if you could really pinpoint even down to the very first human that was walking around, or proto-human or humanoid, who had figured out the seed, if we could figure that out, we should be faithful to that date in that humanoid.
You do think that would be a significant
I think when that thought was come up, it would be a very good time. But the only thing is that then that still forsakes all the other humans that did their own actual thing all over the world too. Because that makes it just that.
Is
that
makes the ultimate point behind a calendar like this is to say that if we use the year of our Lord, Anno Domini, time since Jesus, as the mark, then what you functionally measure is Western civilization.
Probably only, and you're also excluding rich cultures that existed who don't include Jesus. It's kind of like, they're going to think, why is Jesus so significant, and what does that have to do with the mathematical situation of a calendar, so that we have 12 exact months and it repeats, and we don't have to adjust it too much, except for adding an extra day in February, because the Christians who came up with the calendar, they were still mathematicians. There was no one else to do the job because almost everyone was Christian. So it's kind of like you can't really say Christians invented it. If it was Hindus who were that mathematical and they were worried about the calendar, we would have been like, Hindus, fix the calendar for us to make it
the
perfect
Mayans had a
for
calendar.
the rest of time.
My kids are just studying the
So I would say just to include within its net the cultures that exist now, to go as far back as to make sure that they are all within the parentheses, starting with before there was some sort of recordable culture.
Instead of our prophet was born around this time,
and so this is the significant date, and before this is of no concern.
How does
if
China
you're-
feel about the year that we use?
Right.
Since
That's what I'm
their
saying.
culture was there way before Jesus.
And that's what I'm saying. If you can get down to the root of everybody's ancestors, now you're talking about everyone being a family on Earth. Doesn't matter what culture you have.
Yeah.
We all diverge from this starting point here
And
together.
that's why he was saying, you know, that number, like you're saying, is significant to Christians
Right.
only. And so for them, they can keep using that as their religious year to
like
date.
base. Yeah.
But as an entire culture of
Humans.
humans, all
That's
of
a
us,
creative way of doing it, and it works better than, well, I mean, you still have to have a before human era thing where you'd have to convert. I mean, they've stopped. They added an E to, instead of before Christ BC. Old dates are now listed in BCE, unless you went with an absolute year
before
zero.
common
Like
era.
Kelvin as a counting system uses absolute 0 for 0. But
I
that
think
means
that would
any
be-
temperature you want to measure.
that would be the moment the Earth began to form. Would be the absolute
Right.
year zero.
Any moment that you want to, I mean, any real life thing you want to measure in Kelvin is like the numbers are too high, because when you start with an absolute 0, you couldn't like use a number you're still going to have a before whatever number.
Yeah, but
Right.
like I said, before then, I mean, along the chain of events with humans, you're gonna get to a point where if you had been an alien who landed here and you saw what was gonna become Luke and I and you, they would have just seen another primate
Or
surviving
earlier
and
than
eating.
that, they would have just seen some
Exactly,
amoebas or
exactly.
something.
Which is why, if there was a way to know the exact moment, either someone swung a rock, and it was specifically to the line that leads up to us here, the first whatever it was that swung the rock
To
or
break a
figured out
nut
the seed,
open or something.
exactly. If we could be faithful to that date, I think that is where you start going, because we tend to like hold our tools up to like a really high, like, look at everything that's surrounding us and stuff. We're really great, and in fact it is. But there's other things to humans that kind of bring it all together. And one thing I think that gets taken for granted is culture. When we started singing and dancing,
This is interesting. I was just thinking about this. So Jews count history since creation. They will tell you that the world is X thousand years old. I don't know what it is, 6,000 or 7,000 years old.
yeah,
Jews,
just like the counting of the begots.
Judaism. Yeah. Is there a culture? I don't know the answer to this question I'm about to ask. Is there any culture that starts with a year 0 for any other reason other than a religious reason? I don't know if that is-
I think you can, because you can have chimpanzees and you can count some of the activities they do
not
as
saying
culture.
can you. Is there factually?
there
If you look
already?
at all the
Oh,
counting
is there
systems
already?
currently in use, would Muslims use a counting system that counts based on a religious purpose? Christians, Jews, even the Chinese people, would it come from religion, not from any other source? Is there a culture that counts based on anything other than a religious state? I don't know the answer to that question.
A culture that counts, any culture that would be trading. But I think even tribes were going to keep count of their stock if they had any. But if you're hunting and gathering, then there's no such thing as counting.
I know. I'm
unless
saying
it's
of
like
existing
your weapons.
cultures.
Well-
it seems like I'm just making the claim
'Cause
that
there's
it
tribes
seems
in-
like all cultures
There has
count
to be,
based on a religious reason.
because it wasn't that long ago that I can't remember. Don't quote me on this. But there was a tribe of people that hadn't been touched by any other
Uncontacted.
civilization that did not have a God concept. They didn't have any kind of concept of spirits or God or anything like that. And
Where
I'm
did
guessing
you read about that? That's interesting.
I can't remember. We'd have to do a Google search for this. But they found a tribe that they tried to describe God to this tribe
And
once they
couldn't
could communicate, and it just wouldn't even connect with their thought process, because there was no
Interesting.
reason to think that. So for them, if they had some kind of a record keeping system of the date,
it wouldn't be based.
it wouldn't be based on religion,
But I
just
don't
by
think-
default.
I actually don't think any religion actually tries to keep any count at all. We don't have any specific numbers. We've had to like pull them out of the texts and just make assumptions and stuff. I don't think they really care. I think science and anthropology is the one that really wants to get that number right, in some sort of sense of human history, because There is no, and not, at least not in the Bible the way I know it, is there a way to be sure, because it's 6,000 to 10,000 years there.
Right.
That's the
I
estimate.
know. I'm just saying that,
and
that
it's
culture,
short.
I think this is one of the reasons why you'd have a tough time selling this to anyone. There was a group that was going to do things perfectly rationally. The French Revolution. They came up with a new counting system. It's fantastic. Have you ever heard of the perpetual calendar?
No.
They said, why are we using 365 is actually 364 is evenly divisible by 7. 364. And so you get 13 28-day months because we use 7-day weeks. Mm-hmm. Every month would start on a Sunday the 1st, and end 4 weeks later on Saturday the 28th. You just keep using that. And then the problem is you have one extra day in the year, and you just make that extra day not part of any month, any year, or any week. It's just New Year's Day, and you just go from Saturday the 28th, December 28th, New Year's Day, Sunday, January 1st. And it's
Sounds
a
like what you do
perpetual
with leap
calendar. You
year.
always know. It's easy to count with, etc. When you add a leap year, you just add an extra day to the calendar somewhere. They put it between July and Sol, which was the extra month they created. It was going to be great. It was this perpetual calendar. But the problem was, unless you can get the whole world to adopt it, then you have to ask the question, not just what time is it in France, but what day of the week is it in France?
And it
Because
wouldn't
it would
be.
become unsynchronized from the rest of the
It'd
world.
be
So
Monday and a
I
half.
think that this calendar system, the advantage of this calendar system of arbitrarily choosing something, fairly arbitrarily choosing something human that happened 10,000 years before Jesus, is that you're able to retain existing dates in a way that's easily convertible. I like it.
But we already screwed that up with all of our other counting systems in America. Why not go one step farther? Let everyone else figure out their 2,000-year calendar, and we can just go by the 12,000.
Because I think, the intent here is the societal intent, just to, because younger people adopt new ideas much, much easier, which is what's nice about young generations coming up, because they can be more progressive than the older ones, and you need a nice progressive state, because you have life now that's different from 20 years ago, and then 20 years back it's different again. And so in this case, rather than prioritizing arbitrary religion for no reason, it's like this includes all of our ancestors and cultures dating back, not just, what is, if you can just add a 1 to the calendar we have now,
Yeah.
what is the harm?
I think
What is
that's
the
a good-
what is the harm of the Christian religion's culture of having a significant carrier in one point? How come that's more significant than any other of the religious characters at any other point in any other culture? If
No, it's true.
the calendar
As
won't change that much.
Cultural, what do you call it? A truce. It would work pretty well. Yeah, but it is a significant thing that history is marked. The progress that has been made in culture in the last 2,000 years is significant. I mean, it's some secular historians have said, that's kind of the time of the rise of Rome. It's the time of the rise of the West that, that arguably they say that could have happened without Jesus. But it's interesting that Jesus was born at just the right time to ride the, so I'm going to say it as a Christian, for God to use the cultural peace and roads and technology to change the world. It really is a significant turning point in history. If you study it.
I don't know if there's anything between now and 2,000 years ago that would be, as significant as like controlling fire and first surviving out of the wilderness to emerge as a human. And emerging as a human happened far before 2,000 years ago too. We're talking about significant.
And that's not the beginning of time.
brains.
That's the middle of time.
Cause in this case, what we're trying to do is be inclusive. Cause it's kind of like, if you're Hindu, are we really gonna tell
Have
someone,
you ever,
well,
have you ever
2,000
looked
years
at the
ago.
Mercator map and seen how the maps that we use stretch out things to make them larger in North America and Europe? Have you ever studied that? The way that the Mercator projection map makes Europe look bigger compared to China. It looks like, oh, Europe and China are the same size. But if you look on a globe, they're like, whoa, Europe is tiny compared to how big China is. Have you ever looked at that?
I think I have seen some. Are those the ones that make Greenland look bigger than it is?
Yeah, it's the standard map that we use. And there's an argument that Europeans did that on purpose for, make ourselves look bigger than we are. And that may be a functional, what do you call it, a practical application of it. But the Mercator map was designed because you could actually navigate with it out in the middle of the ocean. By looking at the square, you'd do these the patterns that they would go across the ocean. If you look at it on a globe, the ships would be turning at these weird angles, but you could actually know where you were using the stars with a Mercator map. And we just have it as a historical artifact. So there's been a move in the last 10 years or so to say that maps themselves, our maps are racist against other cultures. They're North American centric and stuff. And they may have had that as an effect, but that wasn't the reason for them. It wasn't a bunch of Europeans who sat down and said, how can we make Europe look bigger than it is? It was European scientists who sat down and said, how can we get to India by navigating via the stars around the world the other direction? And that's how it grew. So some things have an effect that is not what you want without having a cause that was people sitting down to make themselves look better than they were. Does that make sense? It's not maliciously done.
Oh, right. Like a map of the stars made people assume that because the way you had to illustrate it physically on a piece of paper was going to show discrepancies in actual physical size. I don't think that's as a significant thing, though. I mean, that's just for navigating in the ocean, but I'm talking about human cultures knowing that they all exist and they're all important.
You should study this alternate. So look up, after we're done, look up the Mercator map and the controversy around it. And within the last 10 years, Google has even changed to a different projection for cultural reasons. I think that this argument being made about the calendar is almost exactly parallel to the argument being made about the map of the world. Check it out.
That they want to include all nations' correct sizes?
Yes.
And would that make the map less efficient, though?
No, but they did have to redraw a new projection that works better. So.
Right, but I mean that's a geographical issue.
Check it out. The parallels between the geographical issue and the historical issue between these two things are
it's not. I don't think. I mean, in this case, we're talking about like the origins of humans, actually starting to take over.
Yeah.
And I mean, would there be anything wrong with including all cultures if it didn't change anything about anybody's calendar?
No, I like this idea. I think it could work.
All right, let's do it. Ready?
On your mark, get set, go.
And it's 12,020.
No, I mean, because you can carry that, and actually, I think that would change the vocabulary of how people spoke about history as well, rather than just thinking like anything significant is only the last 2,000 years. I think does forsake all the hard work, all the people who died trying berries, and different things that were gonna end up being some sort of herbal medication that ended up being a pharmaceutical one. Like there's a lot more. I would say a lot of really important things happened even further back than 2,000 years. I mean, 2,000 years ago almost marks the beginning of climate change.
Yeah.
So, and before that, I mean, you had like all those like wars and stuff in Persia, the old world. but like no climate change. But those were like significant points, and humans just freaking rising in arms in battle, gigantic.
So do you feel like you didn't learn about stuff in that time period while you were in school? And about other cultures than just the U.S.?
No. I think for me it's just a creative way of easily just including and making sure we're not just. It's not just like a 2,000-year power hold, like, you know, real history starts 2,000 years ago, because, you know, BCE is before the Common Era. Mm-hmm. So somebody picked Common based on, I guess.
Well, they did that because BC actually meant before Christ, and they were trying to remove the reference from Jesus from the dating. So the first solution to try to make dating non-Christian centric was to say before current era and current era. But now you're asking the question, why does that, what made it the current era? If you're going to use BC and AD, which is Anno Domini, that's Year of Our Lord in Latin, at least acknowledge that it's a Christian thing and have done with it. Don't try to make that into a secular mark for no apparent reason. Like, oh yeah, no, it's a secular thing.
So this is a tangent, but it's something I was thinking about earlier. Before I dive into it, is marriage a Christian thing? Or a religious thing?
Yes. Genesis 2, the very first thing that happens after people are created is they're married. So I just heard someone say this, that cultures that treat Genesis as history, not just cultures, but religions, Judaism, Islam, Christianity, have a view of marriage as that being one of the most fundamental things that exists.
Okay. From a religious standpoint.
Yes.
Right. Because I heard someone say the other day that they don't think gay marriage should be legal for the same reason they don't think heterosexual marriage should be legal, which is because a religious, concept should have nothing to do with our laws. That's the point of separation of church and state. Like, we're actively making a religious thing part of our laws, and there's people that are not religious at all that are fighting for the right to do this religious thing. And it's funny because to me, it seems almost like someone who's not religious fighting for the right to get baptized. It's like, this is something that is religious. Why are you trying to fight so hard to be able to do it? I totally get it from the gay marriage standpoint, because what it is that they're fighting for is just equality. But it's funny that anyone is arguing that it should be part of our laws and our legal system, that this religious thing should be institutional. Yeah. So I think for me, marriage is something that you should do in church. Like, if you want to, unite yourselves under God in this religious ceremony, that should be something that you do in church that has nothing to do with our taxes or our, our parenting or anything. It's just its own religious thing that if you're a part of that religion and you want to get married under God and show your love to God, that's great. Otherwise, it's silly to fight for something to do a religious thing when you're not religious, in my opinion.
Yeah, there are more and more people, I think, who are coming up with that as a truce. Eddie, do you know how they handled this in South America? That in Bolivia, where I lived, you had a separate wedding in the church as in the state, and you could be married in one or the other or both. So if you wanted a legal wedding, you would go to a courthouse and get married. And if you wanted a church wedding, you'd go to a church and get married. And if you wanted to do both, I've been at wedding ceremonies where they had the legal ceremony, the church wedding right there, and then they had a justice of the peace come right to the same spot and do the civil wedding at the same time.
Yeah, I believe that's how they roll in Mexico as well.
Yeah. The Pilgrims thought the opposite of this. The Pilgrims thought this was not a religious thing. Weddings were only civil things. Pastors should not do them. And so if you wanted to get married in Plymouth, you had to go to the state. You could be married on the boat by the captain of the boat, or on land by the governor of the
town.
county, not
Okay.
So they went to the opposite of this. Marriage is just civil, or marriage is just religious. And
I think
South
we should
America
just
has
call it
split.
something else. Like it could be a civil union or whatever it is. But if the concept is derived from religion and it's this very religious thing that you're doing for God,
Right.
it just seems bizarre to me to call it the same thing, do it in the same way. Oftentimes do it in a church, even when you're not religious. It's very strange to me that we don't treat them as very different things. Like if you want to tie yourself legally to someone and financially to someone for who knows what reason, that's fine. But it's totally different to do the whole we are in love and we're bonded to each other under the eyes of God thing.
And geography, I learned there was a lot of evidence coming up that the you could probably call it the concept of marriage, but I'm going to use a different term for it.
Monogamy.
And say the control of women and their bodies started around the time that agriculture started, but specifically the ability to accumulate vast amounts of resources that were going to last further than your life. And so now what was important to know was who I was going to leave this to, and it mattered to the male that you made sure it was your kin. And now you have all this kin talk throughout history where it's important to know who your child is, and you know, it's specifically wherever the crown is going to go, how important it is that it's the right bloodline. And that starts with agriculture and controlling women, because now you need to make sure that she's not having anyone else's kids, she's only having yours, which wasn't such a common act of like formality as it was about the time that agriculture started.
I would love it if at some point over the next 100 podcasts, if you two would ever consider reading two books called, first of all, Sapiens, and second of all, Sex at Dawn. Because this topic right here is fascinating to me, and I love diving into it. And it's Sex at Dawn is about our ancestors pre-civilization and what their love lives were like, how we evolved, and how humans are built to socialize sexually and relationship-wise. And then Sapiens takes you from before that all the way up to now in human history, including relationships. And they both bring together kind of the concepts.
Who is Sapiens by?
Yuval Noah Harari.
And the other one?
Christopher Ryan.
It'd be cooler if it was by Christopher Walken. Let's just be honest.
Yeah, it would.
Audiobook.
But kind of like you were saying, they break that down in Sapiens, like basically right as humans started to build villages and stop wandering around, that's when they started to collect resources, because for the first time in history they could actually like keep them.
That is great.
Wow. That could have been bad.
I think your cat wants you to know that felines had a lot more to do with early history than you're giving them credit for. I think that was an objection.
Sorry, Moo.
Holy crap.
But anyways, yeah, for the first time in history, people could actually accumulate personal items and property.
Pass them on.
And that's
Wealth
where
and resources.
that's where marriage came in, because they were like, I want this woman too as my property, and let's make this official under God, so she can't be with anyone else.
Which either way, agriculture kind of works as the same way when you watch some of the BBC Earth shows. Whenever you see even birds just like trying to attract mates, it's like some of these male traditions of the hair gel and the shower and stuff. This is all like part of the attracting mates.
Yep.
And whether it's subconscious or not, but it's like libido and work. And so accumulating resources had become like one of the key attractors then. I think it like marked a change in the way, but also I think in some cultures what happened was it was sort of like to me it's kind of sad to think that women became totally dependent on the accumulation of a man's wealth, and so had to become property because they were of no value themselves, you know, and they were just bearing children, for them to inherit. And so
it's hard. I see that without a religious consensus, it's hard to do society together with people who don't have a religious consensus. That when people have agreed, more or less, not on all the details, I don't think that the United States has ever been a Christian country, but there were enough Christians there that there was a truce between different groups that when you said marriage, people knew what you were talking about. It gets hard to do society when you have Christians and non-Christians together, because the way you're describing marriage makes it into a necessary evil rather than a gift from God that's good for men and women. Those are radically different views of what marriage is. And it's hard to do society with people with a difference of opinion.
I think that's why it's important for society as a whole to function on something more universal like secular humanism. Like if we could build a society around secular humanism and then let the religious people do the things the way they want to and let, anyone else do. But there should be a foundation that's inclusive to everyone. That's why...
And that will always work better when my side is in control. If you just let my side be in control, then they would give rights to your side.
No.
That's what we all think, isn't it?
Secular humanism gives rights to everybody.
Yeah.
There's no one deciding what the rights are. It's everyone has rights, has all the same rights.
And there's no rules that make it muddy whenever it conflicts with some other text from some other place.
And then you can do those things as much as you want on your own. It just can't be it can't infringe on me or anyone else that doesn't agree.
Yeah, that's exactly what Islam says about how Christianity can survive in Muslim countries too.
What do you mean? Don't they kill Christians?
What?
Aren't Christians killed in a lot of Islamic countries just for being Christian?
They are, but officially the doctrine of Islam says as long as Christians pay their taxes, which has to be done at a higher rate than Muslims, you just let them do what they want to do. This kill all Christians in the country stuff is actually a fairly recent innovation within Islam.
But
formally, Islam says as long as we're in power, you can do whatever you want, that people are not in power.
But we do the opposite here. We say, as if you're Christian, for your religious buildings and other things, you don't have to pay any taxes.
Yeah, that's
everyone
like
else to build a building does.
Yeah, it seems like a Christian country to me there.
I'm not denying that. I'm just saying that the solution you just proposed was for your group to be in charge.
No, it's not groups.
There's no group.
There's no group.
There's no group anymore.
It's just. It's not
your
groups.
Philosophy. If your philosophy was the dominant one, everyone believes what you're saying. If my group were in power, we would be benevolent to everyone else's group.
I'm not saying
Republicans
my group.
believe that. Democrats believe that. Christians believe that. Muslims believe that.
That's not groups. Like
Communists believe that. Everyone believes that.
The reason that science is useful is that you don't have a group there. You just follow what the evidence says, and that puts you out of the seat of control and in the passenger side of something that it's going to handle itself based on the evidence. Because things like holy books, what that says goes, no matter what anything else happens or whatever happens in nature, the whatever happened in those books happened. And I think that seems to be a lot harsher than the fact of whatever science finds out nature to be, we just go with that. And whatever the numbers show, if we, for example, using contraception in a society or not using contraception in a society, there are really searchable like approaches, like the whenever you let a society like let the women control how much they reproduce, you get to a richer society. They have more wealth and they have less children, and it's not overpopulated. When you don't give that to women, you see that there's overpopulation and there's a lot of conflict. And that's science showing you what happens when you do one thing or the other. So you're not in the driver's side. It's not about beliefs there. You can see it having been demonstrated across the world that some idea is going to work. So what I'm saying is, with science, you have that taking control, not some old text telling you that it should be this way always and forever. Because science will definitely change, and they will tell you when it changes.
I don't think we're very good at following evidence, though. I think that the last year has shown that for every study on one side, you have a study on the other side, and you can't.
I don't think so.
No,
I don't think so either.
That's a misconception.
Yeah.
You have 99% of all the experts in the field agreeing, and then a fringe amount that aren't really scientists saying another thing, without testable evidence, without like the facts to back it up.
Yeah.
Science itself is, the whole system is built.
Science is only a means of measuring things. Science is not a way
you can predict
handling the evidence.
You can predict things with it, and that's why you know the evidence of science works.
Right. No, I am not anti-scientific. I'm just saying that as a guiding principle, there is no such thing as science says X. Science can tell you how big things are.
No.
But science can't tell you what to do about it.
If you change the word science to its Greek name, which is just knowledge, it's the same thing. Knowledge can't
tell you what to do with it. Have you ever heard the statement about knowing that a tomato is a fruit is knowledge? Knowing not to put it in your smoothie is wisdom. There's a point at which, and asking if ketchup is a smoothie is philosophy. There's a point there where knowledge can only take you so far. I don't think science can tell you to do anything. Science can just tell you what is. And if you're saying science has told us this, now we should do that because of it, you're not doing science anymore. That step is not science.
Yeah, no, I know, but that should show you the value of science because it's not controlling you either. It's giving you free will.
So
you do what you want with that information.
Decisions? That's the difference that
would be yourself and how well you're going to handle whether you believe. But there was an interesting quote I read, which was, if somebody doesn't value science, or if somebody doesn't value evidence, what evidence are you going to provide to prove that they should value it? And that in itself is an educational problem, because you're talking about a brain that should be working well. For example, if we do believe there was a creator of the universe and he created the brain that's in your head, what are we using this brain for right now? Are we putting it to the ground and hoping things are going to be okay? Or are we putting telescopes in the sky and really like trying to find out like the if you want the mind of God out there, because that's his creation too. And so our heads should be a lot better at critical thinking and handling evidence. And I think that's where you're supposed to show, when you find out something, if you can make a prediction with it, you have made a valuable discovery, because you can tell the future with that. That is immense power in something that's just a primate. Something that a species that one of its earliest tools is fire, and we have fire departments now. This is how bad we are with our original tools. But our critical thinking should be good. And in fact it is. Look around us, like it's produced some high technology despite our unprofessionalism in handling it, but it still provided some high technology. So you can give that credit to the creator of the universe, or just credit to the biological brain system, but we should be handling evidence correctly. And I think a good way to base it is if you can make predictions with that knowledge that you have.
Yeah. Yeah, but science, we have to be careful. I think this claim has been made a lot in 2020. Science is a way of measuring things. There is no such thing as science that tells us anything.
But it's also
science says X.
Science is also a way of thinking.
The current scientific measurements of X are this. Therefore, I think we should do that. And you can make a scientific argument, but there isn't. It's just like, Luke, you've often told me this about atheism. There's not an atheist way of doing government. Like,
right.
Christians will say, see, atheism as a form of government is bad. Communism didn't work. You're like, but that's not.
No, that was communism that didn't work,
right.
Not atheism.
Or like whatever exactly what they were doing didn't work.
There isn't a quote-unquote scientific way of doing anything, because science isn't a way of doing things. Science is a way of measuring things.
No, I think you could do things still scientifically. Like maintaining your car can't just be done willy-nilly. For example, that takes another knowledge, which is why it's a service. Almost anything we don't know, that somebody else knows that.
And science and critical thinking go hand in hand because they're
Yeah.
a very similar process. It's critical thinking is the science of the brain.
Yeah, because that's you putting together what you know, but it has to be a fact, and putting together the facts to make a predicting choice. And I don't think any other institution provides knowledge or information as well as the scientific community provides the information for us to do what we for us to do.
Interesting thing you just
for the public to do what it will with it, because we still have our own choice: wear a mask, not wear a mask.
Right.
That's how well your brain is handling the evidence.
Right.
So you're gonna have to know how well. You're gonna have to know some basics about how viruses work, some basics about how this one in particular works, some basics about how air and molecules work, and you can start to see that people are highly under the bar to make good critical thinking decisions right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but so to talk about the scientific community, or to talk about the scientific consensus even, is different than talking about science saying X. Science is not a thing that
No,
group of people.
if I ever say science, if you want to, I can also just say knowledge. And well, knowledge is like the knowing. So it's not just knowing that the sun is up there, but how light works and what it does here. Right. And you can make really much better decisions based on knowing how light works than just knowing light is light.
Yeah.
Right. There's a knowledge base and there's a knowing base to that.
So it's very interesting. I'm in contact with people on, I feel like, maybe I'm not, but I feel like I'm in more contact with people with differing opinions on the right and the left than almost anyone else I know. Do you have a lot of other very conservative people in your life that you're in direct contact with that you hear from a lot, or is it always someone out there who has these opinions?
I think most of this is with my friends who I think I would agree. I'll try not to speak for you too much, but who wish there was not even some middle, but some other area where ideas and problems could be prioritized differently. Yeah. But given the only two choices, that question is sort of, I mean, I wouldn't say loaded, but it kind of sucks because I only have the two choices, and it's not like I could say I really don't disagree. But I would say I guess I would fit into one party.
Do you have real humans that you're in contact with who know your opinions and you know theirs, who you're able to have conversations and really listen to the other side? I'm challenging all my conservative friends of this right now, that I think we have silos where we don't even listen to each other anymore. And I appreciate, Luke, your willingness to stay in conversation with me because you have allowed me to not live in a silo.
Mm-hmm. And I was just about to say, you're my kind of point of contact with the conservative world. Everyone else, it's not so much that I don't talk to them, it's that I feel like they don't want to talk to me about this stuff.
Yeah, also I think there's a lot of for me,
better than to talk to them about these topics.
Yeah, I would say oftentimes interests don't overlap for me to begin with. But for me it's different because I also have the cultural aspect separating me from United States culture, despite being pretty whitewashed, I think I would say. Mm-hmm. But still, I can still, it's mostly like, I can tell you the perspective of an immigrant right now. Look, like one thing I noticed from people who are conservative, and I'll talk about people who are liberal too. Conservatives, oftentimes I will notice, may be uncomfortable around me, and my assumption is that they may not be in contact with anybody who's really a minority. And on the left side, I will notice people are very comfortable with me to the point where you can make some offhand, maybe some stereotype.
They can be more
jokes.
Racist because they don't think you'll mind.
Yeah, which is why when the question comes up, having friends who are conservative or liberal, that my point of view is a really outside one when it comes to that. It's like I have to define people more based on like if they really are looking at your character, which is which is oftentimes where I feel a lot with my friends, because you guys weren't from liberal households, you would say. Neither of you guys were.
No, not at all.
And I probably might have been from a conservative one if I had been in Mexico, because of culture and just your point of view there. But right now, there's all the other influences that are just changing the way we think. But we're also making sacrifices because politics is politics. Right. They put in new laws that sacrifice one thing but benefit another. And if that's the thing we're supposed to deal with, that's the only choice we have. But like I said, I think me and my friends and I probably wish we could identify as some other group or party, given the choice.
Why are there only two options here? Why
exactly, because I think that does
because of the Twitter algorithm.
Yeah, well, that doesn't let you really get to know. That doesn't let you get to know someone, because if someone did say they were conservative or liberal, your head, because of the two-party system, is going to bunch them in. But I would say you can have some conservative people who are actually they have much more in common with you in principle and personality than you would expect.
Yeah.
But it seems like anyone who is more outspoken tends to be more extreme as well.
Yeah.
Moderates need to yell more. That's the solution.
Maybe. Honestly, I've thought about that. Why aren't moderates talking?
They'll stop being moderates. I
think that's what we're doing with this podcast. Is if I don't know. I feel like, at least personally, I'm somewhere much closer to the center than on either direction.
Yeah.
Because I have, I agree with a lot of things that people say on both sides, and it sucks that I have to pick one or the other.
Right. I would agree.
And so that's what having a long form platform like this to talk about the intricacies and nuances in the middle, I think is really the best way we can in this day and age, other than just tweeting about it all day.
I think I honestly wouldn't have even wanted the parties like the forefathers, because I think it would. I think it's more of an attempt to unite the people when you don't have the party, and you have to unite them with principles that they can all agree on in majority.
Yeah.
In realistic majority, versus splitting it down and then trying to split those ones up as well.
Why don't we just have a bunch of people that run for president by themselves, who then you can actually look at, this guy likes this, this, and this. This guy likes this, this, and this, and you can pick the one that has
on the priorities of how they think
proportional representation. Are you familiar with proportional representation?
The Electoral College?
No, this is totally not that. The majority of countries in the world, if I understand correctly, use a parliamentary system, but just because you're parliamentary doesn't mean that you use proportional representation. Here's how proportional representation works, if I understand correctly. You vote for a party, and there could be 100 parties, and you'd have a person who's representing that party, but a vote for them is a vote for their party. And as long as their party gets 1% of the vote in your area, you send that one of those representatives. I'm just making it easy by making it 100. So let's pretend that across the U.S. we had 100. You don't have to have 100 parties. You could have 3 parties. But in our area, this party represented by one leader got 17%. That guy got 30%, and that guy got 40%. We would send 17 representatives from the Green Party, 23 representatives who were Republican, and 40 representatives who were Democrats. That's who we would send. So we wouldn't have 100% of people vote and choose one guy who went, but everyone who had an opinion, provided it rises to the level of 1% at least, sends a representative. So when you're done, you have a body of people that, if the United States currently is 50% Democrat, 30% Libertarian, and 20% Republican, that's how the House of Representatives would always be made up, no matter what.
So what? If I don't know, I feel like I'm a utilitarian in my heart, so it's hard for me not to just blurt out, so who cares? If the vast majority of people want it one way, then it doesn't matter what the other people want. But
correct.
I know,
once you still get there,
I know that's
what you
wrong.
get is you get more fringe people in. Because if your area is 1% white supremacist, you actually send a white supremacist as your representative, as a representative out of the 100, so that the minority voices actually get representation. The vote isn't lost; it is carried through all the way to the top of the system. These governments tend to not get very much done because the same divisions that exist at the local level will exist at the top. The way that it currently works, you end up with one party that can actually get something done, except in a divided government situation, which we have now, which Grandpa Art said was one of the greatest things that could ever happen. You want the president to be of a different party from you want the House of Representatives and the president to be of one party and the Senate to be of the other, or one of the lower houses, so that nothing can get through unless both parties agree with it.
I mean,
Crap,
I
you don't have to agree with this position. I'm just
I
saying
am not completely against that because, like you said, it's kind of nice when government works very slowly, because that way, if a truly crazy person gets in with a truly crazy Senate and a truly crazy House, a bunch of crazy shit can happen in 4 years. And so even though it prevents the brilliant ideas from getting through quickly as well, it keeps the balance between one party being able to just destroy the country in 4 years or, make it perfect within 4 years, unfortunately.
I want to add, though, because government, though, in this kind of conversation can kind of sound like, all right, so long as it's the right government, they're going to control the people, right? But I think we have to remember that the people themselves would need to be educated enough. And like I said, I wouldn't even bother with representation with parties. Like I said, I would want people to just agree on principle. That way you can ignore really other things that naturally sometimes will bring into bias, like your race or your orientation or whatever beliefs you may have. I think so long as you had the agreeing principle, the government should also work as something that progresses and it filters out bad ideas and hangs on to the good ones and just changes whenever it needs to, because we have to start doing away with old things, and that should also be a role in government where it starts being just better and better and better, not find what's working and then hang on to that. Our spirit and our mindset should always be to find the problems and fix them whenever they emerge. And it doesn't seem like anyone has that attitude about it. It's more of it's the government's job to just come up with some idea and do it, versus why are old ass ideas being brought up still? I mean, it's good for.
Can you give me an example of one?
Yeah, for women having control of their bodies. That seems to there just seems to be way too many people who just don't. Well,
do you want
agree.
to? Can we talk about that very controversial idea?
I suppose I just don't think we'd be qualified because we're not women.
Men.
Well, here's the thing. I'm not a woman, but I did have a mom, and so I came from a woman. Bill Nye used this argument when he gave his qualifications to talk on this topic. Do you buy Bill Nye's qualification? I had a mom. Therefore, ultimately,
we can talk about our opinions on it, but we shouldn't discuss it as if we have any say in what women get to decide on this topic.
Right.
So that's already conceding the argument. For me to agree with that, I have to buy your underlying premise that babies are physically part of mothers until the moment of birth.
They're not. So I'm not saying that.
So then to say
they're a different person.
That a woman, I can say absolutely that a woman has the right to her own body. The question becomes for me a scientific question. So this is where science comes in. Because of ultrasounds, do you agree that we can tell much more about what's going on inside pre-birth scientifically prior to the moment of birth than any other time in human history?
Yes.
And that because of the technology we have to keep a baby alive outside of a woman's womb down to the age of 20 weeks, which is half of the time that babies normally spend in their mother's wombs, that science itself is telling us that babies are alive and autonomous entities that can survive apart from their mother at least down to 20 weeks old. Mm-hmm. So to say I am not qualified to talk about this because I'm a man, doesn't seem like, and because women have the right to do what they want with their own bodies, to concede that part of it, the argument is made definitionally then. If I concede that I can't talk about it because I'm a man, can I use an analogy? Analogies are never perfect. I get that.
Go for it.
Slave owners in the South prior to the Civil War told the North, this is not your business. It's my own. It's my rights to own people, and I don't tell you what to do with your stuff. So don't tell me what to do with my stuff down here in the South. My stuff, my choice, was the actual argument that slave owners were making in the South. And they would say the North has nothing to do with this. They're not slave owners. They don't have the right to comment on this. I feel like that's the argument behind the argument for whether men should be allowed to talk about.
Can I jump in for a second?
Yeah,
Sure.
I would say do unto others as you would do unto you.
So
Okay.
no one's, I can't say no one. I'm not disagreeing that it's another person.
Okay.
At a certain point in sentience, it becomes a person.
Okay.
However, when I say it's up to a woman to decide what to do with her body, she has the right to decide whether someone can or cannot use her body for their survival. So here's an analogy. Like you said, they're never perfect, but
Yeah.
let's say a woman has a 5-year-old son,
Mm-hmm.
and the 5-year-old son needs a last-minute blood transfusion or liver transplant or something, or they're going to die. And the mother's
Right.
there. She's the only donor possible.
Right.
Should it be her legal obligation to give one of her kidneys to that kid? Should that child be able to use her body for its survival by law without her consent?
Let's take the law out of it for just a minute.
Or
'Cause
morally?
That's part of why this gets hard, is because legal stuff is involved. But you're telling me that you wouldn't try to coerce that mom, talk her into it at every way you could, possibly short of the law forcing her to do it?
I would say that in the end, it's her choice.
It's still
her
Right.
choice.
whether or not some doctor tries
might
to
be
talk her
wrong.
into it.
Yeah.
Right.
Is different from whether or not it should be her choice to decide. And that's why I'm not making a moral argument for abortion or anything. All I'm saying is that I don't think anyone, whether they're a 40-year-old man or a 3-month-old fetus, should be able to use someone else's body without their consent in order to survive. So if it was a 40-year-old man that needed that kidney, she still should get to choose whether or not she gives that kidney, in the same way that if she decides, a month into that pregnancy that she doesn't want this baby to use her body for its survival anymore, she has a right to abort the pregnancy.
And I would go further as to saying that there's even institutions that are the ones themselves convincing a woman, whatever hardships come with having a male head of the household, because that's part of law, biblically, that she also has to surrender her body. And that's where I would say she needs to, even in a marriage, why does it seem that all power always goes to the male? Can she still not control how her body is used in the marriage?
We're straying a little bit from the point, but I understand that this is bigger and more complicated. But likewise, a lot of abortions are coerced by boyfriends, husbands, and even abusers, that the woman is not the one who wants to have the abortion. It is actually the father of the child that wants to get rid of the evidence of abuse.
Super fucked up. And
And so this isn't just a matter. I don't see why. Luke, you did a better job of explaining it than I think I've heard someone say before. Your analogy of, should you be forced to give a kidney to someone? And I'd have to think about that analogy more. But it's not. This isn't just. It's not just a woman's choice issue. And to define it as just a woman's choice issue only, to try to remove all complexity and just say women should be allowed to do what they want with their own bodies, if you absolutized that, we stop people from doing what they want with their own bodies a lot, because what we do with our bodies hurts other people.
No, but you can't use someone else's body without their consent. And if the woman did not want that baby or fetus to be using her body, it's up to her to prevent that person from using her body without her consenting to it.
Let me try one more analogy and see if we can get anywhere with it. How about Siamese twins who said one of them had a heart and one of them had a heart and the other one didn't have a heart? Should the Siamese twin with the heart, who's keeping the other twin alive, be allowed to amputate the other twin because it's their heart? I don't know whether that's possible in that situation, but let's pretend for a moment that you could clearly identify whose heart it was. And the other one, should they be allowed to amputate?
Are they alive? Twin? Are they somehow alive still?
Yeah, they're both alive.
And can they survive like that their whole life?
I don't know whether this is possible. This is a hypothetical situation. If there is a situation where only one of them is required for the survival of the other because of a symbiotic relationship between them, in a way that one can remove the other, but the other can't remove the other, so that it's not a completely separate identity where the mom is having to give something to the child, but where you have a connection that would be the removal of one that results in the death of the other, was what I would say is a more direct parallel to the reality of a mother who is pregnant than a mom with a 5-year-old child that needs to take one of their kidneys.
I would say the twins being attached is much more of a random event than pregnancy.
So is a mom giving a kidney. Can you go with the analogy? What would you say in a case where you have Siamese twins, where one person has the organ required for the other one to survive, and the other one says, nope, it's my organ. It's messing my life up to drag this person around with me for the rest of my life. If you remove them, I have a much better life. Just cut them off so that they'll die, but I need this to be able to survive in my life and have a better life. Would you give permission for that operation to happen on this same argument? Would you apply that same argument to this situation? And if not, why not? And I guess I'm saying the only why not I'm saying is because this is a ridiculous situation that would never happen in real life. I get that. That's the point. I'm trying to create some parallel.
If I compare that to Luke's analogy, then that's the mom having the choice of sharing the kidney and they're both alive. I think
mom carries the baby to term.
Yeah, and I think the mother themselves.
Then they get disconnected.
I think the mother themselves may. I mean, she's the child's already born there, and normally when you're speaking of abortions, you're not really conscious. That the fetus isn't conscious yet, and it seems like in this case, both twins are conscious.
Okay, so consciousness.
Like he has his personality. Factor. Like he's been alive.
I disagree. I don't think consciousness matters, for the same reason that the mother shouldn't be required to give that kidney to the child without her consent. That child is conscious, and that child is going to die if she doesn't do something about it. That's the difference between the Siamese twin analogy. Is the analogy I'm presenting is that child, the only way for this child to survive is if the mother actively chooses to give up a part of her body that she didn't already have to.
Got it. Okay. The analogy then, I think, is that the problem is that the mom has to take an action to save her child's life in the case of the giving a kidney, or the mom has to refuse to take an action to keep a baby inside of her. It's not natural for babies to the process of a baby being removed from a mother and dying is not the natural process. It is the unnatural one. It's the operation. If a mom does nothing, the baby will grow to babyhood and exit her body. She doesn't have to take an action to save the baby's life. She has to take a non-action to save the baby's life.
I don't know. I think I should have clarified. Women in control of their bodies, I meant in the context of controlling things like overpopulation. I don't think just aborting fetuses that are unwanted are what contributes to controlling population. I think it's also the freedom for a woman to use contraception and not be chastised by the society.
So I'm not a Catholic, so I'm not arguing against contraception. I do believe that scientifically a baby is alive and a separate entity and viable. Even by those traits, I can't see how you can make a scientific argument. Have you seen Bill Nye's argument for abortion? The short.
No, but look,
you should find it.
I would strictly avoid the argument for or against abortion by just saying, think of how many abortions could be avoided if women could be on contraception and be educated about it, not pressured about you have to have as many children as the male decides that you should.
Is that
have.
still happening in the U.S. by and large? Women don't know about the existence of contraception. Men want to have as many babies as possible. Is that situation the reality in the United States?
It's not something that is seen to help the society for the government to say this should be something that we should provide and educate people with. It seems like there's a lot of influence on saying that's a bad thing to do and it's a wrong thing to teach, even though it helps societies to not be overpopulated.
Is still taught all throughout the South.
Exactly, and it doesn't
as
work.
the form of contraception.
Exactly.
And that's a problem because it leads to abortions.
Yeah, and so you have to think about how many abortions you could prevent if people could use contraception or be educated at least on it.
I don't know.
This is a separate argument that we're having now than about whether or not men, once there's a baby conceived, whether a man, this is the very limited point that I would love to be able to move the needle on slightly. It's not crazy for a man to have an opinion about whether abortion should be legal or illegal just on the basis of being a man. Because babies are separate.
I agree. It's okay to have an opinion.
I think he can have the opinion on his own situation, not on everyone else's. And that's when you say against or for on law. We were just hoping that women can be let known that they can decide.
If you define someone as not alive and not human, then you, by definition, laws, it's just a matter of freedom. That's exactly the argument that was made in the South. If black people are not alive or not human, then it's just the slave owner's choice what they do. And in Nazi Germany, if Jews are not alive or not human, then it doesn't matter what
Who's
we do
saying
about them.
that babies or fetuses aren't alive or human?
And so that's the definitional difference we're at. If a baby is alive and human, then I, as a man, have the responsibility, not just the right, but the responsibility to try to defend them. Would you agree with that? If you grant the premise that babies are alive and human, even though I'm a man, I have the not just the right, but the responsibility to attempt to defend them.
In the same way that you can try to persuade that woman to give her child a kidney, you're welcome to try to persuade the woman from stopping to abort her pregnancy, but you can't enact laws that prevent her from being able to ultimately decide whether or not someone else gets to use her body.
Well, what if we said her food? What if what if a parent said, I'm not going to give my kid food anymore. It's my food. I'm not going to share it with them. It's my food, my choice. If they starve,
that's not her body.
So what is it about being your own body that is different than any other way of keeping another person alive? What's fundamentally different about that?
I guess you would have to ask yourself that if someone came to you today and said, there's a guy dying outside, give us your blood. Like, we need to take your blood and you need to save him. How is that different from someone coming up and asking you to feed your kids? Like, it's vastly different. I
have been asked that, and I have given the blood.
Right, but you did. If you had said no, it would have been your choice. It should have been your choice.
Now you're making me wonder whether I'd be in favor of forced blood transfusions. And you might be pushing me into saying, yeah, I think I would be in favor of that. What if I said that?
And what's the limit? You know, what you don't need both of your kidneys.
Yeah, because you
could maybe live without one lung. Like, at what point can you stop? What part of your body can someone not take without your consent?
So are we talking about exceptions where if the mother's life is in danger, yes, I wouldn't
That's
be
the majority
opposed
of cases,
to an
I
exception.
believe.
the single exception for abortion of life of the mother, because you're now getting to the point where taking both of my kidneys would kill me. Can we agree that most women delivering a baby in today's society, I know this hasn't always been true, but most women giving birth to a child is not a 99% chance of death just to go through with the birth of a child.
I'm not going to argue that point.
I would say it's still high risk. I think it might veil saying it's not 99% death of risk, but I think we should be clear about what is the
There's
percentage
a lot
death.
of risks.
Yeah, especially deformities with children, no matter how you treated your pregnancy.
Yeah.
And complications, which I believe are still the majority of cases for people needing abortions. I don't think anyone agrees with something that I think what people describe as what I would call a casual abortion, where it's like, oops, ha ha ha, I'll go get an abortion. I don't believe we need to be concerned with that use of abortions. Because I don't think people...
You don't think there's anything wrong with abortion as a form of birth control?
Nobody
what I'm
wants
saying, yeah,
that
that's what
to
I'm saying.
happen.
That's an assumption that people are going to use it like that.
No one.
Where's that coming? Like, why
I don't
are we?
know this either.
How could we assume a woman would want to use
this
it?
would be an interesting
as birth
statistic.
control?
Statistically, how many abortions are done for the purpose of birth control? I don't know. I think
it's a
if
very
there were,
small number.
I would just try to put
way
yourself in
to
that
prevent-
person's shoes. You
Even-
would
It's
not
not
want
that easy.
to happen.
Yeah, it's not that easy of a choice, I don't think.
Yeah.
So I don't think they happen like that.
Yeah.
I think it's
They-
much
they
harder
do.
than we think.
They do. It's
They
a
do
huge
happen like
percentage.
that.
No. What I'm saying
it's
is that
some.
I think that is the lowest number of uses for abortion of any case than there is any other use for them.
Right.
Which
Okay,
would be
so then
medical
let's
help.
say it was 100%
Okay,
people that
yeah.
that accidentally got pregnant
and
just
used it as birth control.
didn't want a kid. Still her choice. Still her choice. It's her body.
then-
she doesn't have
Then
to
still the
keep
if
another
that-
body alive.
Is that because you believe that babies are up until some point are either not alive or not human?
No.
Okay.
I think it's a human embryo and then a human zygote, a human fetus, and a human baby. It's all human and it's all alive from a biological standpoint. It may not be sentient at certain phases of that, but at some point it's
then
sentient.
how about at some point is it wrong to kill the baby while it's still inside the mother's womb and take it out, rather than saying this baby is developed enough that if we delivered it, it would survive. Therefore, you're not just removing the baby, but this is the mother not going into the child who needs a kidney and saying, no, I'm not going to give it the kidney. He's going to die within 6 weeks anyways, so let's just kill him now. Is there a point at which, because of viability, scientifically provable that if you deliver the 21-week-old baby, the baby lives, but instead you administer a poison to the baby before it's born and now remove the baby from the mother dead, at what point does that cross the line to where it is murder, the same way it would be murder for a mother to actively kill the child because she wasn't going to give the kidney?
I think there are levels where you could say it's still early enough, but I think we could agree that at some point you should say that it's too late. But if we're gonna say that though, then we're also assuming we've educated our young women and men well on the subject before we just start imposing. Forcing them to do things.
Once we've done absolutely everything as a society that we can to educate people about contraception,
being honest about that,
all of that stuff, we've provided social programs to provide these things to anyone that needs it. Right. At that point, then we can have that discussion. But in the meantime, while we have severely uneducated our country in this matter, through our school system, like I didn't learn anything, even in Maricopa High School. Yeah. I learned nothing about contraception.
And that county had the highest teen pregnancy rate.
Highest teen pregnancy. Yeah. And so it's not, once we get to that point, where it's like, should you be able to abort a baby at 9 months?
Then you can treat someone responsible enough to say, well, this is the consequence now.
You were fully educated by us. We made sure that you knew how to prevent this in every way.
You were given the resources to do so.
You were given the resources, and yet you've now let it get to be 8.5 months. Now it is no longer your right to make that decision. But even then, that's between her and her doctor. I mean,
because honestly, anything short of that, you are forcing someone.
Wait. So this is the part that I would love to know.
Because someone else is using her body
a baby
without
is born
her consent.
That you would say, but I can do things.
It was kind of like how God used Mary's body without her consent.
Is it not? I think we lost connection. I didn't hear what she just said.
Oh, no, I was just saying it was a little bit like Mary's body being used without her consent. I think she was just given a heads up.
Yeah, it's this is again, I guess this is all I would ask is if you believe like I do, based on not just the Bible, but on science. I mean, scientifically, babies are alive and human, and you can see them inside the womb, and we know that through common means now, you can deliver babies up to a super young age. Can't we at least have a consensus based on science that at the very least there is an age at which point it is not just a mother choosing not to carry her baby, but it is actively killing the baby, and that becomes other people's business, whether or not even prior to the birth of a baby. Otherwise, if parents have a supreme autonomy over their children, how old does that go through? What's magical about that age? Kids are still reliant on their parents to keep them alive through young ages, and if their parents don't want to be bothered with that, why should their parents have to be bothered with that? And if they don't want to give them to someone else, why can't they just get rid of them? What's different? What's magic about?
I think the difference would be that
the point of birth.
With the abortion, you're talking about at the point of a beginning, not a 5-year-old who you all of a sudden as adult decided I'm tired of this 5 years later. I think that's a way different situation where you have already done this thing. Like you've already had them and you've already begun to raise them. I think here we're talking about where you can still do something about it, that if they chose to do so, a woman could do something about it if she wanted to. Before they're a 5-year-old kid and now they're like, crap, I changed my mind.
I'm going to make a claim that you can fact check later on. I invite you to do so. Leading up to that, would you agree that Europe is more progressive than America is? That in general, European countries are more progressive than the U.S.?
It's hard to measure progressiveness because necessities change so much. I would say the most progressive country right now is tackling climate change hard.
Okay. I think that's fair, though. I mean, from a standpoint of what we consider progressive and
so here's the claim that I need to fact check. I don't think there's any country in all of Europe where you can have abortions out of the first trimester. That the argument I'm making that babies cross a line very early in development, beyond which it becomes other people's business. Even in Europe, where they're very progressive, they would restrict abortion to within the first trimester. So I don't know if that holds any weight for you as a progressive goal, but what do
you mean by it becomes other people's business?
That it would be like a slave owner saying, they're my slaves, my business, quit telling me what to do with my own property. That for the explanation that a woman's right to choose what happens to her own body does not extend to ending the life of another viable human being. That's how they would argue it.
I don't know, because like I think if we're talking about saving lives and stuff, there are children starving to death right now who've already been born, and this tiny insignificant number of women who might decide to use abortion as birth control, not once, but over and over and again.
Would you actually, after this is over, look up how many abortions happen in the U.S. and what percentage of them are elective abortions, where they are done for
we'll check that.
Basically as a form of birth control. Elective abortions. What's the number per year in the U.S. and the percentage that are elective?
And we'll look for
That's a
how
knowable
many.
fact.
And we'll look for how many children die of starvation in the United States every year.
Yeah, look that up too. Yeah. This is good. I feel like I learned something from this conversation by your kidney analogy, Luke, that I will have to think more about than I have thought before, which is good.
Yeah.
That is a good
because I
progress for me.
I guess in my eyes, you would not just be granting rights to this fetus, but you would be granting special rights that you're not giving to that 5-year-old that needs a kidney transplant. And I don't think there's any reason to give special rights to a baby that has yet to enter the world or understand anything about anything. When it comes to the woman's right to decide whether or not she wants to allow anyone to use her body.
Yeah, I would say we're making laws about it, especially when there's no laws prohibiting a nation of letting a child go hungry.
Yeah.
Well, there are. I mean, if I starved my own children, I would be in very big trouble for it because they're my children.
Right, but it continues to happen despite there being the law.
Well, I think we've gone over the 40 minutes a little bit here, but this has been a great conversation.
Yes.
This one's going to take a while for my computer to process. But
it's been good to talk to you guys.
Yeah,
man,
this was
nice
great.
to see you, Micah.
I mean, like you said, you're one of my favorite people to have on the podcast for that very reason, that we are so caught up in these echo chambers all the time of like just being surrounded by, blasted on social media by, this is the way. Like The Mandalorian, this is the way. But it's good. I think it's great to have these conversations, even though we disagree. It's because, like you said, also like I learn a lot, and sometimes my perspectives change based on the conversations we have because I think of something in a way that I've never thought about it, or I'm presented with evidence that I didn't have before. So, always love talking to you. We appreciate having you.
Yeah, man. It's nice to have you.
Me too. Thank you. I'm honored to be able to be... I believe I'm the first repeat guest ever on the Millennial Experience.
Chandler
has
well,
repeated.
Did Chandler come back twice?
Yeah, but still top 2.
Right.
Silver medal.
But you've done the longest podcast.
It's true.
You've done the longest podcast.
I think you've had the record for the
most
longest
time.
now.
Yeah, you've had the most time on podcasts. So. Yeah,
I know half of our conversation from last time didn't even make it into the show, so that's good.
That's true.
I do actually appreciate you fact checking when you do listen to the podcast. Like I said, when you let me know, like
I'll let you know faster next time.
I mentioned that Salem. I said the Salem witch trials happened in Salem, Oregon, when it's actually Salem, Massachusetts. Stuff like that. And maybe we should have a 15-minute podcast once in a while where we just have a list of all of our
fact checks.
By the way, we said this about something that was inaccurate, and we're sorry.
Scott Adams said recently that he thinks that being able to have conversations, even when your facts are a little bit off, but be able to roll with it and correct those later, sometimes is better. Like you just gotta.
Yeah, because you could bring a halt to the conversation just because you didn't have it.
If you're Googling everything all the time, you're like, oh, that was off a little bit. You're like, well.
If you're like, I don't have a PhD in criminal justice, therefore we can never discuss anything related to
therefore
crime.
I don't know whether it was okay what Officer Chauvin did.
So we can't talk about this.
Exactly.
So, all right. Well, it's been great to talk to you, and we'll have you back on soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, man, we'll have you back on.
Thank you very much. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Thanksgiving, etc., etc.
Happy celebration.
Let's just say happy holidays and be inclusive here.
Oh, that's great.
All right.
All right.
We'll see you.
Cheers.
See you, man.
What we found. Oh.